Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Let's talk about Nusrat Ghani to start with. How offended are you on behalf of your colleague, given what she says she's been through?
Well, Nuz is a valued colleague. I've known her for a very long time. She's worked incredibly hard, both as a minister and as a backbencher. She's made a very serious allegation. The Prime Minister spoke to her last night and said that the Cabinet Office will investigate this and look at the detail of this. She put out a statement last night saying, actually, and to be fair to her, that this could be people who weren't even members of the Conservative Party, which is why we have to get to the bottom of this very quickly. And, of course, the Chief Whip has come out and named himself as the individual. Now, I work with both colleagues, and I think it's important that, someone like a Cabinet Office senior civil servant should look at this properly, because the Chief Whip has also categorically denied this. And I think it's important that... Well, I'm not going to impugn either colleague. We're one team. We work well together as a team, and that's what the nation expects. And this is, of course, and as I say, this is a serious allegation. It takes someone a lot to make such a claim. I think it's important that Nuz is allowed the ability to put her case forward, put the evidence forward to the Cabinet Office.
Why didn't anybody take what she had to say seriously at the time?
I don't think that's true. I think
that's what she feels.
The important thing is that, well, she's also said that she spoke to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister wrote to her, asked her to put forward a formal complaint. She didn't think that was the correct procedure. Now the Cabinet Office can look at this properly, and I hope be able to report back swiftly.
When something like this happens, it's the job of the Chief Whip to put their arms around an MP and protect them while there is an inquiry going on, whatever. Given that this allegation is, by all intents and purposes, he's outed himself, against the Chief Whip, what did the Prime Minister offer her instead to protect her during that time?
Well, I think what the Prime Minister's done, and he spoke to Nusrat Ghani last night, is to offer her that investigation from the Cabinet Office, which I think when you read her statement...
2 years ago?
Well, he offered her 2 years ago, at the time, for her to make a formal complaint and use the party procedure. I think she also went before the Islamophobia inquiry that Professor Singh held for the party. But look, these are really painful allegations for anyone of Nuz's background to make. I think it's important that she gets to be able to put her evidence forward to...
I don't understand why it's a party issue. I mean, if somebody actually said that to her, it's Islamophobic.
Well, as I said, she needs to now be able to put her evidence forward, and I think the right thing to do is to allow the Cabinet Office to investigate.
So you're saying it's her fault that,
no, not at all.
It didn't come to light 2 years ago?
Not at all.
So
not
whose
at all.
fault is it?
Not at all. I think, as I said, I don't have all the details. She's made an allegation which was in the Sunday papers, and then, of course, followed up with a statement. The important thing is that what she's asked for is what the Prime Minister has now spoken to her and is delivering through the Cabinet Office inquiry.
One wonders why it's taken 2 years to get to this position.
Well, as I said, I think what happened 2 years ago...
She was a vulnerable woman. She went to the Prime Minister. She said, this is what's happened to me. I've been sacked because I'm too Muslim, basically. And it's taken 2 years for it to come to light.
Well, and he took it very seriously, and he said,
Did he?
If you... Absolutely.
Well, and this is a Prime Minister who's said that he likened Muslim women to letterboxes and bank robbers.
Well, it's also the Prime Minister that has promoted
Nadhim
Zahawi to Secretary of State of Education, Sajid Javid to Health Secretary, Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, Kwasi Kwarteng.
That doesn't negate using that
No,
sort
of course
language.
not. Of course, I'm not saying anything other than the important thing to remember is this is a Prime Minister, in my view, who doesn't look at your background or your religion or anything else. He looks at your ability and whether you are capable of doing a job, and then absolutely makes that decision. At the same time,
what about if you're a woman and you're too Muslim?
Well, again, I was going to say,
it's ridiculous.
and it's the same. It's the Prime Minister who actually asked Professor Singh to conduct an inquiry into Islamophobia. That inquiry came back with some recommendations which the party's overhauling its systems to make sure we deal with
said about that. I think the findings of this report show clearly that the Conservative Party is institutionally racist.
Well, it made a number of recommendations for the party. It also said that Islamophobia was not widespread in any way in the Conservative Party.
Institutionally racist.
I don't believe that. I've been a member of the party. With all respect to Baroness Varsi or anyone else, I've been a member of the party since the late 80s. I've risen through the party. I've been a local councillor for 3 terms. I've been a volunteer in the voluntary party. I've been a member of parliament. I have not actually experienced any form of racism.
Two Muslim women are saying that they don't feel that that the party treats women of colour, particularly Muslims, appropriately.
My view is, of course, we can always do better, which is why we had the inquiry, which is why we're overhauling our systems. There is no place, as I said in my tweet over the weekend, for any form of racism or Islamophobia or anti-Semitism in our politics, in our party. I take great pride in the work I'm doing with the education sector, at universities, in terms of signing up to the international definition against anti-Semitism, the work we're doing at schools, the work we're doing across government. I think that's important to remember. But, in a case where a colleague, a valued colleague, comes forward and says, look, I've heard this, or I think, there are issues that I want aired and dealt with, it's only right that we then deal with them.
What should happen to Mark Spencer in the meantime?
Well, I think that Mark Spencer, again, I work very closely with Mark, has categorically denied this and said this is defamatory. So I think it's only right and it's only fair. It's one of our values. You remember when we talked about the Sue Gray report before?
It's taken 5 minutes to get to Sue Gray's name.
No, but it's one of our values of fairness, and people have to have a fair hearing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to impugn the reputation of either colleague. It's right that the Cabinet Office looks at this now.
OK, William Ragg, let's talk about him, chair of the Standards, deputy chair of the Standards Committee. He is seeing the police today after allegations of threats and blackmail against MPs. Is whipping bullying, or is it bringing MPs into line?
So I've got good experience of this, not because I've been in the Whip's office, quite the contrary. I've been a backbencher for a very long time. It's taken me 11 years to get to Secretary of State. I am the definition of it as a marathon, not a sprint in politics. And for 7, 8 years, I was a backbencher. I've rebelled. The Whips, and I've never experienced the sort of stuff that William Ragg is describing at all, I can tell you. And many colleagues actually over the weekend came out with a number of articles saying they don't recognise this.
Others did, though.
And I think they have, then a responsibility to put that evidence forward. All I can say to you, from my own experience, I haven't experienced any of that, and I've rebelled before, but it hasn't impacted anything to do with my work for my constituency or government decisions. There is due process in government, whether it's the Department of Education or any other department, in how we make decisions. I'm glad you brought up the Department of Education Secretary, because Christian Wakeford said that he was told by the previous Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, that if he didn't come into line, then they would remove a school that was promised in his constituency of Bury. Would you, as Education Secretary, have the power to withdraw funding for a school in an MP's constituency? No, because we have due process in government. That is absolutely not what happens in the way we take decisions in government. So you don't believe Christian Wakeford? No, Christian Wakeford has just crossed the floor and joined the Labour Party. Doesn't mean he's a liar. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying to you that he's made an allegation against a colleague. Gavin Williamson, clearly doesn't... A lot of allegations against a lot of colleagues going on at the moment. No, but all I'm saying to you is Christian Wakeford has chosen to leave the Conservative Party and join the Labour Party. All I would share with your viewers is that the way we conduct ourselves as a Department of Education, we have due process, which we follow. That particular school is getting the funding that it needs. Okay. Nothing has changed. So, there is an inconsistency here in terms of what Christian Wakeford is saying and what the reality is on the ground. OK. Talk to me about, while we're on schools, you're pledging 9,000 air cleaning units. We are. So you remember when I came on the programme a few weeks ago, we delivered 350,000 CO2 monitors to schools last year to monitor the air in the classrooms. And the data we got back, which we're publishing our survey on this today, is that actually the bulk, so 95% of classrooms were able to ventilate and keep the air fresh from the data we were getting from our CO2 monitors. That was 25 million investment in CO2 monitors. Then we modelled as to which classrooms we thought may not be able to do that easily, and we thought we're going to need about 8,000 air purifiers.
Yeah.
We think we're going to need about 9,000 now. And so actually, in terms of being stewards of public money, rather than following what the Labour Party wanted us to do, which is buy 350,000 air purifiers at a massive cost to the Exchequer, we bought 8,000. Actually, last week, we got all the schools to make their allocation, and we got to just over 8,000. So we've gone to 9,000 now. We're delivering air purifiers to help those schools. Okay. It's part of making sure that education remains open. I'm passionate about making sure children remain in school, remain in education. We see all the evidence from the Children's Commissioner that that's really important. And that's why we're doing it, including, of course, making sure that teachers get themselves tested twice a week, and, of course, vaccination programme, which we just spoke about. OK,
and what is your advice to school heads who still want their kids to wear masks, even though it's not compulsory anymore?
So we trust school heads and school leaders to do the right thing. I think they would agree that masks can be a challenge for learning, for communication in the classroom, which is why I wanted them not to last a day longer than necessary. When we saw the data from the scientists that Omicron was plateauing and actually numbers were beginning to drop, and they told us that we've reached the peak, I moved very quickly to say the guidance to wear masks in the classroom can come away last week. The guidance for wearing masks will fall away as part of Plan B this week. That's, I think, the right thing to do. And, of course, I speak to Directors of Public Health who've done a tremendous job working with school heads to make sure that we get this right in localities. If there is an outbreak in a locality, they can reintroduce temporarily masks in communal areas if they wanted to, but they work very closely with us, and it's a strong relationship I have with the front line. I'm very proud of that.
See, I didn't ask about Downing Street parties once, but I will be asking later on in the week. What does TL stand for? Tory leader?
T-levels. I'm going to make them as famous as A-levels. These are technical. They're a fusion between an apprenticeship and an A-level. And actually, they're a fantastic thing, which you're going to hear much more about from me.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot, Education Secretary. Thank you.